I'm a little bit late to the party when it comes to reviewing these particular headphones. However, as I'm planning to sell these on because I need to fund some more headphone purchases, I figured I'd give these a review on their way out of the door. These are the Sennheiser HD 598 CS or Cs? C's? What does the S stand for? Let's get into it. Hey guys, it's Noel and this is Wheezy Reviews. So these are the Sennheiser HD 598 CS or Cs. Maybe I should just call them the HD 598 closebacks because that's what they are claimed to be. So we're looking at a closed back dynamic driver with 23 ohms impedance and 115 decibel sensitivity, which is really, really efficient. So that means you should be able to drive these off of pretty much anything. Now, these were touted as a closed-back version of the well-regarded HD 598. So, of course, I had high expectations for these. However, they seem to be an entirely different beast. They do seem to have an entirely different driver. So the original open-back HD 598 had a 50-ohm driver with 112 dB SPL, and that suggests that the closed-backs are using a completely different driver. In fact, when you look at Sennheiser's other close back in this range, the HD 569, that also has a 23 ohm driver with 115 dB SPL. So it would seem that this actually shares a driver with the HD 569. So that doesn't really make this a closed back version of the HD 598, but rather an upgraded version of the HD 569 in the same way that the HD 598 was an upgraded version of the HD 558 at the time. However, the HD 569 sits in the newer refreshed product line of these headphones, and the HD 598 closebacks sit in the older product line. Confused yet? But what's more, externally, we have a design very, very similar to the HD 598, however, it's using the headband from the HD 599. So it seems to be a bit of a mongrel design, sitting somewhere between the older and the new product lines. So included with these headphones is the usual Sennheiser Comedy 3-meter cable with a 1/4-inch plug on the end, but you also get this 1.2-meter cable with an inline remote. Now this has a remote and a microphone, so you could take phone calls on it. However, it only has one push button, so that's for answering and ending calls. There's no volume on here, which is a bit of a shame. As with every other headphone in this line, we have a twist to lock connector. This is a 2.5mm TRRS in this case, thanks to the remote. This would usually be a 2.5mm TRS, and it has this twist to lock feature, which is the same one on the entire range, and also very, very similar and compatible with the ones on the Audio-Technica range, the Audio-Technica M50X and the M40X. So when I bought these, I was looking for an isolating headphone. At the time, I was using the HD 558 as my daily driver. And I was a big fan of the HD 558, so I had high expectations for the 598 closebacks. I figured they would be a good choice. And Sennheiser are clearly pushing this as a portable headphone with that 1.2-meter cable with the inline remote. And they were also marketing these as a noise-blocking headphone. Now, isolation is okay. It's just merely okay, especially in a world of noise-cancelling portable headphones these days. But overall, build is pretty good for this headphone, just like it is on the entire of the HD 500 line. These are absolutely bomb-proof, and I hear some people say that, they're a bit worried about them because they're plastic. Well, I don't think you ever need to be worried about these. I don't know what you would have to do to break a pair of HD 500 series headphones. They really are some of the most well-built headphones that exists on the market. But as I said, they're almost entirely made of plastic. However, on these, we have this pleather or leatherette, or I'm not sure if it's real, it's probably not real leather, headband with a really decent amount of padding on the inside. The back of the ear cups is covered in this sort of soft suede material. On the other models in this line, this would be a mesh grill for the open back, but on these, obviously being closed, they just decided to cover it in this soft material, which is really quite nice. Now, the ear pads are covered in a soft velvet-like material, but these are not the original ear pads. These are the Geekria Lamy Velvet ear pads, and unfortunately, they do color the sound a fair bit. But the reason why I replaced them is because the original ear pads fell apart. I'll cut in some footage of that now. The velvet material itself starts to flake off after a little while, and they become completely unusable because they just entirely degrade. And that's a real shame, because those ear pads are probably the most comfortable ear pads I've ever seen on any headphone, bar none. They really are fantastic. And these ones are the same sort of shape and design, so they're good for demonstrative purposes. Look, they're nice and deep and spacious. This entire line of headphones is probably some of the most comfortable headphones around. They really are fantastic, and that's why I stuck with this design of headphone for quite a long time when I was getting into headphones. I had the 558, the 598 closed. I've got the 599s now. I had the Game Zeros, the Game 1s, all based on this same shape, and the ear pads compatible all with each other. And I stuck with that because of just how comfortable they were. Now, unfortunately, aftermarket ear pads of this design are actually really difficult to come by. You can find the velour ones that are on all the other headphones quite easily, but the velvet ones that were on here originally, they seem to be quite difficult to get hold of. Sennheiser don't seem to sell them as a aftermarket replacement or anything like that, and at least I've not seen them. That might be different now. However, these Geekria Lamy Velvet ones, they do have a similar style and feel, and they are quite readily available, but because they color the sound so much, I wouldn't recommend them. A headband adjustment has plenty of range for larger heads. It uses a not too stiff ratchet adjustment mechanism. They are made of plastic as well, these extenders. But this headphone is extremely flexible. So despite the fact that the clamping force on these is actually pretty high out of the box, probably a lot higher than it is on the rest of the range, they do give after a while. And again, just like the rest of the range of these headphones, they're probably some, like I'll keep saying this, they're some of the most comfortable headphones around, full stop. So moving on to sound, let's talk about soundstage and imaging. Now, the HD500 series is really well known for a decent soundstage and imaging, and for that reason, they make absolutely excellent gaming headphones. However, the HD598 closebacks, they do suffer a fair bit from being a closeback headphone. So that means they're not really up to the same standards as the other headphones in the line. However, they don't do a bad job for a closeback headphone. Overall sound signature and timbre is typically Sennheiser. However, it's not the most refined Sennheiser headphone around, and has a few quirks that might be a deal breaker for some people. So first up, bass, it's actually quite respectable with a decent amount of extension. In fact, bass reproduction is probably the strong point of this headphone, to the point that it's almost a one-trick pony. That's not to say that the 598 closebacks are especially articulate. This isn't a headphone with excellent clarity and resolution in its bass, but it does an okay job. It does have some decent authority and presence, which makes them excellent for EDM and hip-hop, for example, and other bass-heavy music. Mid-range performance is really quite weak for a Sennheiser headphone. It tends to be the strong point of a Sennheiser, but unfortunately, not so much with these. There's a big dip somewhere around 300 hertz in the low mids, or even upper bass, whatever you call that. Then it climbs thereafter. So between about 450 hertz and 3 to 4 kilohertz, it just keeps on rising. In fact, this leads them to being really, really quite shouty and bright in the upper mids, to the point that vocals, especially female vocals, are quite harsh. They're quite piercing. Snare hits, though, were pretty punchy, and they really cut through the mix, but that might be a little bit too much. It can certainly be a bit fatiguing. Distorted guitars are screeching and metallic and just downright piercing and painful to listen to. So I'm sorry, metalheads, this probably isn't a headphone for you. So during my listening tests and a few years with these headphones, I found that pretty much every musical genre that I listened to suffered on these headphones, especially as I'm into rock and metal and post-hardcore and so on. However, they do a pretty good job for EDM and hip-hop and other bass-heavy music like that. It's just for rock music and anything with any kind of bright tones in it, they're just too piercing and harsh on these headphones. Now, treble response is also a bit of an oddity with these headphones. Whilst overall it is fairly restrained, it does have a rather nasty peak somewhere around 8 to 10 kilohertz. Treble's not entirely lacking in detail, however, it's not especially resolving either. So the upshot of all of that is that the only genres I was able to really enjoy with these headphones was EDM. Basically anything with a solid and deep bass line that I could really get into and nothing too bright, and it was completely fine. All in all then, this is a really strange headphone to bear the name HD 598. They are anything but an HD 598. So in summary then, as with all of the HD 500 series headphones, this is superbly built and supremely comfortable. Other plus points are that they're incredibly easy to drive and at least have a decent bass performance for those into EDM. However, this headphone, despite its name, is no HD 598. And unfortunately, it's merely standing on the shoulders of giants. The mids, particularly the upper mids, are so shouty it rules them out for pretty much everything except EDM and hip-hop, unless you're some kind of masochist that enjoys that kind of thing. Now, a question some people might be wondering is if they spot these on the used market for a good price, are they worth picking up? Well, assuming that you understand the failings of the sound signature of these, it's really going to depend on the condition of the ear pads, I think. Sadly, the ear pads on these are not built to last, and they do break down after some time. Third-party replacements will negatively affect the sound, and Sennheiser don't seem to readily provide replacement ear pads for these particular headphones. But assuming you could replace these ear pads with originals for a reasonable price and you were happy with the sound signature of these, then sure, they're a pretty good headphone for EDM. But for my personal tastes, I'm just not a fan. When I bought these, I was looking for a closed back for isolation, as I mentioned earlier. I've never been a huge fan of closed back headphones. I much prefer an open back, but sometimes you do need isolation. And it took me a little while to find a closed back headphone for a reasonable price that I actually liked. And this headphone was one of those mistakes that I made along the way. It is not a headphone that I particularly enjoy at all. If you've seen any of my other videos before, I'm sure you'll know what I'm about to say next. And that is that once I bought the DT770 Pro, I think I found my all-time favorite closed back. And so for quite some time, these have been sitting on a shelf not being used, especially as the original earpads have had it, and these really aren't the same. I'd say if anyone was eyeing up a pair of these on the used market, I would probably look at the DT770 Pro instead, or even the AKG K371, and I would skip these or even the 569 entirely. Right, so that's going to be it then. I hope you found this review interesting. If you did, give me the thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, consider hitting the red button down there and perhaps the bell right next to it. I'm working on quite a lot of content at the moment, but I'm only putting out one a week so far because buying headphones to review is pretty expensive and this channel isn't making any money. Hence why I'm selling these on to fund some more purchases. But if you like what I'm doing, please do stick around and subscribe. I'm going to have a lot more like this coming out soon. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, have a good one.